Hello and welcome back once again to my lair. Today we do not have Mango, so it is just us. And I would like to talk to you about the extra equipment that wizards and other spellcasters will likely be keeping on them. This will, for our full casters, mostly be ways of offloading or adding extra oomph to some of their spells, since that is where the majority of their abilities lie. You're not gonna be too worried about runes or specific weapons, although maybe you might be interested in some. You're not particularly going to care about oils because you have a spell for that. What you are going to care about are ways to cast spells without spending a spell slot resource, or ways to increase what your spells are already doing. And for the first one, the simplest answer is the humble spell scroll. Now, these can just be crafted on any day where you aren't expecting to get into any kind of trouble for a relatively modest amount of gold. And compared to most of the other options at your disposal, this is easily the cheapest and a simple conversion of gold to spells. Your cheapest first level scroll is only going to cost you 4 gold pieces. Going up 12, third rank, you're looking at 30. And it keeps going up from there, but it is also, like I said, the cheapest way to just buy a spell. There are quite a number of spells that are just, you don't need them that often. So having them as a scroll is actually quite useful. You don't have to prepare it, but you do have it at pretty much a moment's notice. A good example would be water breathing. You don't know necessarily when you're going to need to be able to breathe underwater, but if you just have a scroll of it handy, you are less worried if it just comes up randomly. They are the most straightforward to use. Basically, as long as the spell scroll is a spell scroll of your casting tradition, i.e. arcane, divine, occult, or primal, you can cast it if it's within your ability to do so. It's also probably one of the easiest ways to cast a spell above what you are capable of casting. But that is a conversation for a different time. We will move on to an item that augments your spells, the Grimoire. Grimoires are spell books that are in some way, shape, or form infused with magic in and of themselves. They either can give you basic abilities, something that's like once per day, do a little bit of extra damage of this particular type. Example is Corrosive Engravings Grimoire, that once per day, if you cast a spell that does acid or poison, that spell now deals persistent damage and can also sicken the creature affected by it. Another good option is the Endless Spellbook, especially worth investing in early. Having it as your primary spellbook, hidden somewhere, that you add to pretty much whenever you're home and have your downtime. It has its uses whenever you use it as your primary spellbook, but I personally would absolutely have one hidden off somewhere and have it as my primary. It can hold any number of spells, so unlike a traditional grimoire that can only hold up to 100 spells, this one is simply limitless. And for only 230 gold at its cheapest, that to me is a very worthwhile deal. its uses whenever you use it as your main spellbook, by the way, is it grants you a +1 item bonus to learn a spell, and during your daily preparations off of the grimoire, you get to prepare an additional first level spell. And depending on how powerful your endless grimoire is, that spell could be much higher. But for your base model, it's just an additional first, and like I said, this would be my home book. Moving to another repeatable, if more expensive way to offload your spellcasting, wands. Now, wands are they aren't as cheap as your scrolls, by any means. However, they do give you a once per day casting of that spell. And on top of that, if you needed it, you could overcharge a wand to cast it again. That could risk breaking the wand, but sometimes that's just a risk that you need to have. Wands are great for spells that you would want to cast daily, but don't necessarily want to hold up the spell slot for it. The first level mage armor is one of the first things that comes to mind of a spell that's great to just have on a wand. It's a spell that you would probably throw on every day at the start of your adventures, and it lasts until the next time you prepare spells, which can be the next time you cast it back on from your wand. Perfect wand spell. There are a couple of others. Again, these are great for spells that you'd cast more frequently than something you would get from, say, a wand. But not quite something that you are going to be casting always, if that makes any sense. A Wand of Mist, for example, is a great wand to keep in hand, but not necessarily one that you would want to prepare always, especially if you have a wand of it. And it means that you always have access to it. A collection of elemental resistance wands bought early within your adventures will probably be more valuable than you could ever consider. Of course, you could also just buy a couple wands of Fireball and go through 3 of those a day and just call that a day. Everyone loves it whenever you bring several wands of Fireball, because that's the thing that makes your brain happy. Moving on to the most expensive version of offloading your spells, but also the most versatile, staffs. Staffs are items that let you, again, cast spells from them using a series of charges. Staves are items that you can charge during your daily preparations for free to add charges equal to the highest spell rank you can cast. This doesn't cost you any of your spell slots or anything you have prepared. They last 24 hours, and the next day you can prepare it again. If you are a prepared spellcaster, meaning you change your spell list of spells that you can cast each day, you can expend a spell slot to add a number of charges equal to the rank of that spell. So if you can cast up to, say, 3rd level spells, when you prepare your staff, you could expend a 2nd level spell to have 5 charges on that staff. However, if you are a spontaneous spellcaster, this will be your bards, oracles, and sorcerers, and they have the same list pretty much always. Instead, you can reduce the number of charges that the spell takes whenever you cast. For example, instead of spending 3 charges to cast a 3rd level spell off of the staff, they instead only expend 1 off of the staff and expend a spell slot of their own to supplement the additional charge. This way they can get extra uses out of the staff from it in a way that could be similar to your prepared casters. Staves also can be etched with fundamental runes, but not property runes, which is a good thing to keep note of. Valuable staves, such as a Staff of Air, for example. At lower levels, you can cast cantrips such as Gale, Blast, Air Bubbles, Gusts of Wind, and higher tiers of the staff give you access to up to 5th level spells, and Lightning Storm, Blazing Dive, Ash Cloud, Fly, Wall of Wind, Lightning Bolt, Ash Cloud, Obscuring Mist. Just the higher tier your staff, the more spells and spell ranks it will have access to. You can also craft your own, and I would encourage many spellcasters to do this, both with your wands, your staves, and your scrolls. Whenever you're not out adventuring, just have these things prepared. Proper preparation of staves and other items that let you offload your spell casting can extend the amount of time you can be out and doing your thing. Most of these also recharge every day and add to your utility, especially if you are a spontaneous caster and don't have access to the variety of spells that your prepared caster brethren will have. Wands and scrolls are a great way to supplement that. Even if it's once per day, it's still more access to what you're able to do. And that is going to help your party succeed tremendously. For your prepared casters, keeping backups of very in-demand spells helps you to feel better whenever you're not sure what you can prepare for your day. Having that wand of enlarge person for in case a negotiation goes bad, and you can enlarge the fighter whenever the deal goes down and nobody wants to talk anymore and swords start getting pulled out. But you didn't prepare your enlarged person because that's not what today was supposed to be about. So that's why you have your wand of it. Or your scroll. Or maybe you were able to have that enlarged person prepared because you main your Endless Grimoire. And it gave you an extra first rank spell slot. Either way, these are fundamental items for any spellcaster to want to keep in their inventory on their person. I hope, as always, you enjoyed this conversation. Please, if you did, hit the like, comment, subscribe, and enjoy your day. And goodbye.